Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. It is Christmas Day here in America. Maybe you celebrated Christmas yesterday if you're in Asia. Maybe you don't at all. But regardless of your circumstances, today is a holiday, at least for me, and I didn't really want to do like a super intensive video today. I did have a couple videos planned that I want to get out before the end of the year. But since today is Christmas and I don't have a ton of time, I thought I'd just do a nice, easy, fun little video for you guys. Because I realized I've actually never shown you guys my backlog in full, even though I have talked about it from time to time in various videos. So today we'll be going through all the models I have in my backlog one by one, talking about why they're here, talking about my plans for them, and whether or not I'm even planning on keeping them. So first we have the pile of models next to my desk on my left. This is mostly high-grade models with a few SD Gundams mixed in as well. Right on the top, we have the SD Gundam Ultron. This is from that, was it Sengoku Souketsuden, the kind of, I guess, Dynasty Warriors-y, for lack of a better name, themed kits that they do all the time for SD Gundam. I actually really enjoy this line. I've built a lot of other models from it. I just happen to have not built the Ultron yet, so he's still sitting in my backlog. So the next three kits that I have in my backlog have a little bit of a theme to them, and that's because I actually wanted to use these in a video. I want to do a video at some point where I kind of go through various attempts by Bandai throughout the years at making more sort of beginner-friendly style kits and sort of see how their mentality towards making those type of models has changed over the years and which ones are good and which ones are not so good. Of course, the entry grade RX-78 is going to be the centerpiece of that video, but I also wanted to compare it to the Gunpla Starter Set Volume 1 and the Gunpla Starter Set Volume 2. Another reason why I got these sets is because this Gunpla Starter Set Volume 2 is actually the only way to get a Gundam G40, or at least the easiest way to get one nowadays. This is basically the only high-grade RX-78 I didn't already have, so I thought it'd be cool to complete the set. I would say out of the three, though, that the one that I'm looking forward to building the most is probably the entry grade. Then we have my most recent P Bandai order, which was the Leo S and the second Victory Gundam. These are both very cool high grades. I'm really looking forward to building these, especially the Leo S. I love this design. I loved it in Cross-Rays, and I even loved it before Cross-Rays, and I am so glad to finally have a real physical model of this. Even when Bandai started making G-Unit kits like the Geminus 1 and 2, I thought they would never get to the non-Gundam mobile suits from G-Unit, so I am so happy they did a Leo S. And then the second V is just plain cool. Like, I have no reason for picking this up, I just thought it looked awesome. Ah, yes. Our old friend, our old nemesis, our old frenemy, real grade Sananju. This is one of those kits that doesn't really need an introduction. We all know how it turned out. We all know how much hype there was and how much disappointment followed it. I wanted to make a video that was kind of a several years later follow-up, looking back on this kit and seeing if it was really all that bad. Unfortunately, in the time since me getting this kit, Zaku Relius has basically made the exact same video that I was planning on making. And while I haven't seen his video myself, going off his other videos, I'm assuming he probably gave a fairly accurate assessment of it. Whether you think the end result was good or not, this was a really hacky kit. I mean, they took parts from the Mark II frame and they just slapped on some extenders and adapters to try and make it fit a very different body type. And at the time that this came out in 2016, this was probably the best we could have gotten. Sometimes, though, I wish this kit came out just a few years later, because we've gotten so many cool real grades recently, like the Zeong, the Sazabi, the New Gundam, the High New Gundam, that are these big, bulky models, not unlike the Sananju, that were given brand new frames and tons of love and attention from Bandai, and they really made them just absolutely incredible kits. And if only the Sananju came out a few years later, we would have had an amazing Sananju model to go with them. Although I suppose the other side of that coin is that if the real grade Sananju wasn't such a disaster, Bandai might have never realized how much extra work they have to put in those larger models in order to make them good. And instead of getting a terrible Sananju, we would have gotten a terrible real grade New Gundam, or a terrible real grade Unicorn. So in the end, I guess the Sananju kind of did have to take one for the team in order for us to get the real grades we have today. Under that, we have another Sananju, and this is the SD one with the motorcycle. It's another one of those Souketsuden kits. Haven't gotten around to building it. Probably will eventually. In fact, I'll probably build this and the Ultron in the same session, because these are like 15-minute kits. Uravan Gundam. Alright, so I do not like the Re-Rise kits very much. I don't know how much of a hot take this is, but I was not very interested in the line because 99% of it was the same Gundam over and over again, and the very few kits we got that weren't some variation of Core Gundam and armor just didn't really appeal to me. However, this is one of the few Core Gundam variants I've picked up, and it is the only one of the 3 that I have not built yet. One thing that I did find very funny about this particular model is that it actually bears a very strong resemblance to a certain other kit I have in my backlog, and that is the Age 1 full Glanza. And to be totally honest with you guys, I'm way more interested in building the full Glanza than I am the Eurovin. And not only are these 2 kits similar to each other, but there's actually a third model that I have in my backlog that is very similar to these 2 that we'll be seeing in a little bit. Alright, so we've made our way down to the bottom of the pile, and now we're into some of the smaller 1/100 scale kits like the Zaku FZ. Now this kit is one that I was actually kind of planning on maybe having a video out for by Christmas. I was thinking maybe do like a kind of a build/review of the Zaku FZ and the Mastergrade Alex 2.0, but that just didn't really end up working out time-wise. I don't know, maybe I'll build them next year. And I'm pretty sure I've actually unboxed this next kit on my channel before, but this is a model that has been in my backlog for a very long time, the 1/100 scale Serpent Custom. I absolutely adore this design, and while this is an okay model of it, I would really much prefer to see something modern. Okay, so we're into the second half of the high grade stack now, and we're starting out this stack with the Bandai Cup Noodles. Now, obviously this was a kit that I had to pick up because, come on, how could you not? I was going to make a video talking about this kit because it's just such a cool, interesting model, but unfortunately in the time it took for this kit to come to the US, literally everyone and their grandma put out a video about this, even channels that aren't specifically Gunpla themed. And by the time I got my hands on one, there just really wasn't anything else to say about this. I'm still probably going to build it eventually, and I don't know, maybe I'll make a short about it or something and see if that takes off in the algorithm. I'm getting so much dust on my desk from bringing all these kits up here. This next one though is actually a kit that I absolutely love, and I can't wait until I finally have a chance to build this. Probably the only kit of the Neo Zeong I'm ever going to own, but that's okay because this one is really, really freaking cool. This might be the single coolest SD Gundam that Bandai will ever make. It's a fully functional Neo Zeong, you get the entire Sananju model inside of it, and it's even got more functionality than the high grade does, because you actually get the Psycho Frame effect parts inside the box instead of them being a separate P Bandai release. This is a model that doesn't get reprinted all the time, but if you ever see one of these at your local hobby shop or online, you should absolutely pick it up. It's a really, really cool kit. So under that, I've got a few HDUCs. We got the Zaku 2 Revive, which I think might be the most recently released kit in my backlog, or at least one of them. I'm not super eager to build this because I do really like my assortment of Origin Zakus that I already have, but I do think this model is really cool, and I do like the more anime style aesthetic that it has going on. Then under that, I've got the DJ, which is, I don't know, I guess it's okay. This is a model that I thought I'd really like when I picked it up, and then after I got it in hand, I kind of wasn't really feeling it anymore. However, the next high grade below that is the Zeta Plus Unicorn version, and this is a model that I could only see myself getting rid of if I managed to get my hands on the premium Bandai Zeta Plus C1 version with the awesome Super Cannon front nose piece thing. I think this is a really cool model. It has some of my favorite box art in the HDUC line. I love how you can see that VTOL takeoff in the background. And then there's the Gustav Karl crouching over here in the bushes that I thought was so cool back when this kit came out. I thought it looked like a really badass, beefed up Jesta. I didn't actually know what a Gustav Karl was at the time, and it took a very long time before we eventually got a model of this, but once we did, of course, you know, I had to pick it up. And it ended up being just a really cool, chunky kit. Whoop, yep, that's why I don't take stuff off the back of the shelf. I'm definitely going to get to this kit eventually. The only question I really have at this point is, am I going to paint it? And if I do, how much am I going to change it? Because while I do really like the aircraft gray that the kit comes in by default, I might want to spice it up a little bit. This next set is one that I'm definitely going to make a video on if I ever do build it, because it's just such a unique model. In fact, it's actually several models. You've got this little Zamel that kind of turns into a catapult. You got an Ashimar that turns into an axe. And the real reason that I picked up this set is that this is probably the only model of the Astron I'm ever going to see in my life. Seriously, Bandai, stop pretending like Gundam X doesn't exist. So under that, we got a couple P Bandai kits. These are both ones that I'm probably going to end up selling eventually. We got the Commander versions of the Maganak, which are pretty cool, I guess, but not something that I'm like super hyped for. I was a little bit surprised when I got this because I always assumed that the Maganak sets were actually two separate Maganaks, but instead this is just a single Maganak body with the parts to convert it into one Commander variant or the other, which was a little bit disappointing. I also have a Gym Sniper Custom that I got just because I thought it looked kind of cool. In the time since I've gotten this, I've decided that I like the Mastergrade Gym Sniper Custom way more than this one, and so this is something that I'm probably eventually gonna, I don't know, list on eBay or throw it up in my Discord and see if someone wants it. Actually, speaking of, it's been a while since I plugged my Discord server, so if you want to hang out with me and some other Gundam fans in the community, there's going to be a link down in the description below. And then at the bottom of the pile, the last one in the HG pile here is the Real Grade Double O Riser, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually going to get around to building this kit. I do like the Double O Riser, but I love the Master Grade, and I actually really like the High Grade as well. The High Grade Double O Riser was the first model I ever built, and I'd almost kind of rather rebuild another High Grade Double O Riser than build a Real Grade. Even though the High New Gundam was an experience that I absolutely adored and definitely changed my opinion on modern Real Grades, I'm still not really a big fan of the older ones. Okay, so that was the entirety of the pile to the left of my desk. Now I'm going to put all this stuff back and we're going to move on to pile number 2. Okay, so this next pile is the one that is on my desk. I actually have several piles of kit boxes on my desk, but most of those boxes are just for storing accessories for kits that I've already built. However, the far rightmost pile is actually a bit of overspill from my backlog. So the top kit in the pile is the high-grade Gundam Geminus. I am actually really looking forward to building this kit, and the only reason I haven't yet is because I missed the original pre-order window for the flight and atmospheric units for it, and I haven't gotten around to picking them up on the aftermarket yet. As soon as I do, though, this bad boy's getting built for sure. Underneath that, we got a couple of newer Real Grades. We got the Real Grade Crossbone, and then the Real Grade Force Impulse. These were kits that I was kind of apprehensive about building before, but now that I've had such a great experience with the High New Gundam, I'm a little bit more hyped for them. I'm sure they're not going to be quite as good as the High New, but I'm hoping they'll be a lot more like the High New than a more traditional Real Grade style build. This next one, pardon the mic cable that's probably falling into view, but this next kit is that third one that I was telling you about that looks like the Eurovin and the Full Glanza, and that is the Triage Magnum. And actually the Triage is probably my favorite out of these three. I just think it's so cool with that awesome giant beam cape. That's such a cool effect part. I love his giant sword. This is a pretty awesome kit, and I'm definitely looking forward to building it. And I think this, the Full Glanza and the Eurovin, might be a pretty fun trio to have displayed together. Alright, so this is not a super tall pile. There's just a couple kits left in it, but here we have a kit that I'd actually wanted for a really long time and was eventually able to pick up. The high-grade Gundam Underwater type, or Marine type, or Gundiver, whatever you want to call it. This is a really cool looking model, and I think this was one of the first Origin MSD-P Bandais we got that was really like a proper heavy retool. There's a lot of new material on this kit, and I love how it looks. I think the blue and orange color scheme of this model looks great, and this guy along with the Aqua GM have been a really big one of mine for a long time, so it's really cool to see that Bandai has at least made half of that wish come true. And then we have the meme, the myth, the legend itself, the high grade that no one ever shuts up about how great it is, so I ended up buying one anyways. Moon Gundam. I have very little motivation to build this kit. I don't know when I'm going to get around to building it, but I am going to eventually because apparently it's the greatest thing ever. I suppose it's not entirely fair to say that I just bought this because of the hype though, because it is a pretty awesome looking design. I haven't read the Moon Gundam manga myself, but it has some awesome cover art by Ippei Gyobu that I absolutely adore. Even ignoring the great designs he made for IBO, G-Reco, and Moon Gundam, just his regular art style when he's drawing on his own is so freaking cool. And then at the bottom of this pile, we have another Origin favorite of mine, one of my favorite Zaku variants ever, the Zaku Desert type. This is definitely one that I'm going to get around to building eventually because this model looks so cool. I'm so glad the Desert Zaku has an official modern kit now because it's always been an MSV favorite of mine. And that was the final kit. Oh wait, actually no, there is one more kit on my desk backlog because under a few other random piles of boxes, I have a very cool model that I have yet to build, but I will eventually. And I might even make a really fancy, pretty, super premium looking review of it because of all the Gunpla ever made, this is probably the one that deserves it the most. And that is the very cool Gundam G40. This is actually a pretty hard kit to get your hands on depending on when you bought it because this thing was very hard to find. and then very overproduced, and then I think it's kind of looped around now to being hard to find again. If you actually can get your hands on one of these, though, it seems like it's a really cool build experience, and it's one that I'm definitely going to share with you guys. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the backlog pile on the right side of my desk, which is going to be all the Mastergrade and larger models. In the Mastergrade pile, we have a lot of heavy hitters because I'm much more of a 1/144th guy than I am 1/100. So I generally only buy Mastergrade models if I think they're really, really cool. So starting off big, we have one of the must-haves of the P Bandai series, the Mastergrade Ultron. I was so happy when the US P Bandai shop re-released these because it meant I was finally able to get my hands on one. And I can't wait until the day that I build this because I love the EW Ultron design. The only thing that could have made this better would be if it came with the wings and tail right out of the box, but unfortunately you have to buy a separate expansion set for that. And while the wings and tail included with that are cool, it is fairly expensive because you also get a bunch of random parts for kits that I don't have nor ever plan on building. So I don't think I'll really ever end up picking up that set. Next up, we have an absolute grail of mine that I felt like I massively overpaid for until I saw what they go for on eBay nowadays. And that is my favorite mobile suit of all time as a Mastergrade, Red Dragon Astray. Big kit, beautiful kit, total overkill, but I had to have one. I missed out on the first run of pre-orders, so when they put pre-orders back up on the US shop, I jumped at the opportunity, and I believe I got this kit for around $80. At the time, I thought that was a lot, but it was the amount of money that I was willing to pay to have my favorite Gundam as a Mastergrade. And seeing as this kit goes for around $250 to $300 on eBay nowadays, I am a lot more confident in that decision than I was at the time. Of all the Mastergrades I've got in my backlog, this is probably the one that I'm most likely to build next. The next kit in my backlog, I believe, is actually the last model that I purchased, or one of the last models that I purchased before COVID ruined absolutely everything and anything, and that was the Mastergrade Kairos that I still haven't gotten around to building, but I swear I will eventually. I love the Kairos, I love the Dynames. Not only did I enjoy them in 00, but part of my attachment to these Gundams is that the HCM Pro figures of these two were actually some of the first Gundams that I ever got. Back when I got into Gundam, the three things that I picked up were the high-grade 00 Riser, the HCM Pro Kairos, and the HCM Pro Dynames, and both of those HCM Pro figures were absolute hot garbage. And I massively regretted picking them up, but I love the designs anyways, so of course, I had to get the Mastergrades. And yes, I am eventually going to get Virtue as well. Next up, we have a kit that I think I actually brought up in my collab that I did over on MJ's channel. If you haven't seen that, there's going to be a link in the description. If there's not a link in the description, just yell at me in the comments and I'll add it eventually. The high-res God Gundam. I was actually considering selling this because the real grade was coming out and I would kind of much rather have the real grade than this. And the fact that it's like 140 bucks means that I could probably get a lot more for it than what it's worth to me. But after looking at some pics on Dalong and Schizophonic, I kind of completely turned around my opinion of it, and now I'm really glad that I have this because I am definitely going to be building this kit. And it is going to look awesome next to the real grade. And when I said that my Mastergrade backlog was all heavy hitters, I was not joking because the next guy in the list, Mastergrade Barbatos, might just be one of the best Mastergrades we've gotten in recent years. This kit is insanely cool. Of course, I had to get one. Unfortunately, I have not gotten around to building him yet. Everything I've seen of this model, though, makes me very confident I'm going to love it. Look, I know I just said that the Red Frame Astray Red Dragon is my favorite Gundam of all time, but this is another very close contender, a design that is relatively new to the Gundam universe, but I absolutely adore, and I'm so glad I was able to get the Mastergrade for it, because fortunately, this is actually not necessarily one of the easier to get Mastergrades nowadays, but it was not a popular Mastergrade P Bandai kit when it came out, which meant I was actually able to get this one on sale, which was insanely cool. And this is Mastergrade Stormbringer. So this is a kit that a lot of people I think passed on, a lot of people weren't that hyped for. I am like the total opposite. I think this is like one of the coolest things ever. They basically took the Gym Dominance and they turned it into a Gundam. One of the things that I love about this kit is it reminds me so much of one of my other favorite Gundams, which is the Full Armor Gundam 7th. It has the same kind of aesthetic as that Gundam, and I absolutely love it here just as much as I did there. Except unlike the Full Armor Gundam 7th, which is an 11-year-old high grade, this is a brand new Master Grade with all the awesome engineering that comes with it. Okay, now we're getting to the bigger, heavier models, so this one might be a little bit awkward to get on the table, but this is a kit that is currently in limbo. And of course you can see it's right here in front of you, Mastergrade Sananju OVA version. This is a big freaking boy. There's pretty much one thing that's determining whether or not I build this model, and that is whether or not I can get my hands on, man, what's the company called? I think it's Takumi Studios. There's a company that made a amazing looking injection molded plastic conversion kit for the Mastergrade Sananju that makes it look absolutely incredible. I believe It's a Gunpla did a review of it, and I think I've seen it a couple other places as well. It's not cheap, but it makes the Sananju look absolutely incredible. And if I can get my hands on one of those, I'm 100% building this. If I don't know what's going to end up happening to it. If I ever have a real proper place that I can do some serious painting, I might just end up upgrading it myself. So underneath, we have another model that is of the Xeon Persuasion with its big old mono eye. This is one that I'm a little bit lukewarm on. I did build the base model this is based off of, and I kind of liked it, but not really a ton. And that is the Izak Custom Zaku Phantom. On one hand, I absolutely love the Izak Zaku Phantom. On the other hand, I don't really love this rendition of it. I've talked before about my misgivings regarding the Mastergrade Zaku Warrior and how really severely they redesigned it for the Mastergrade kit, to the point where it kind of almost feels like a completely different mobile suit. And while I did eventually warm up to the changes they made to it after I built the Lunamaria version, the Izak version throws another wrench in the design by taking the relatively small subdued miniguns that are supposed to be over the shoulders of the normal Zaku Phantom and blowing them up to the point of absurdity. And yeah, I'm a guy who loves me some giant Gatling guns, but this is not a kit that's meant to have giant Gatling guns. This is the Zaku Phantom. The guns are supposed to be relatively small compared to the rest of the mobile suit. And for the Mastergrade, they just decided to slap a pair of heavy arms cannons to his back, and I know it's a really silly reason to not like a kit, but it kind of ruins the whole proportions of the model in a sense. And really the only reason I still have this kit in my backlog is because I'm holding out that maybe, just maybe, I'll feel about the cannons the same way I did about the regular design after I built the Lunamaria version, and I'll turn around on it. I will say though that even if they didn't do a great job with the cannons, they did absolutely nail the B-Max. Oh boy. This is a kit that I am so excited to build, and someday I will, but unfortunately I just haven't been in the mood lately. Ree Jay-Z Custom. I cannot describe in words how hyped I was when I saw we were actually getting a model kit of this suit. I love this design. It's one of those things that I just thought we would never ever see a model kit of. And unlike a lot of people, I actually adore the colors that this comes in by default. I think the purple and the blue look super cool together. And while I didn't like the colors of the original Ree Jay-Z, I actually think they work a lot better here. And if you've seen my review of the original Mastergrade Ree Jay-Z, you'll also know that I don't completely hate this mold the way some other people do. Is that the end of the first stack? No, there is one more kit in this stack, and then we move on to a whole different can of worms. So let me see if I can maneuver around the lighting stand here. It might not sound like it to you, but it is a little awkward to move around in here because I have a lot of stuff in my room right now. Okay, so this is a very dusty model because it's been sitting at the bottom of my backlog for probably over a year at this point. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that Zaku FZ that I said I was planning on building for Christmas. Of course, it's the other half of the duo, the Alex 2.0. I know there were kind of mixed responses to this model when it came out. Some people thought it wasn't detailed enough, some people thought it was too bulky. I think this kit is pretty awesome, and I'm just happy to have a good modern Alex Gundam. Whenever I build this kit, it's definitely going to be built alongside the Zaku FZ, and probably, ideally, I would like to build it for next Christmas as like a holiday special video, but I have no idea how well that's going to work out. If next year's anything like this year, I'll probably just end up putting it off again. Alright, so the next stack is the behind the stack, the hidden in the corner stack of kits that I'm really not that interested in building, but I've been too lazy to put up on eBay, and that is the kits that I just don't care that much about anymore. Funnily enough, now that I've said that, the top kit on this stack is actually the one that I am the least interested in selling and the one that I'm most likely to keep. Because, while I definitely was not expecting to get this kit because it was kind of a surprise from an Abawaku box, it is a variant of one of my favorite HGUCs, Silver Bullet Suppressor. I wasn't like super stoked for this kit in narrative. I thought it was okay, but like not like super amazing. But after having the kit in hand, it's kind of cool. Out of all the kits we're going to be looking at from now on, this is probably the one that I like the most. So the Shining Break I bought back when I was buying pretty much all of the Build Divers kits. At the time I was planning on reviewing basically the whole line, but I got kind of burnt out on that, and the Shining Break ended up kind of falling to the wayside. If I ever do decide to get off my ass and actually list these things online, he's probably going to be one of the first ones to go. So because of how far in the corner these kits are, and because they haven't been touched for months, if not years, these are some very dusty models coming up. But the next one's the Leo. Now you've probably already seen the Leo on my channel, and that is because this is a second Leo that, even though it's in with the pile of kits I don't really care about, it's really just there because I ran out of room, because I am probably eventually going to build this, just because, let's be real guys, you cannot have enough Leos. So having a pair of Leos to flank something like a real grade Tall Geese, or maybe tag team my Wing Gundam, could be pretty cool. So at the time this kit came out, I did really like the prototype Goof. And I still think to this day this is probably one of the cooler Goof kits out there. I love the swapping arms gimmick. I love how it's also compatible with the mobile workers, so you can switch around the arms on that kit too. However, I don't really have a huge desire to build this kit anymore. So this next one I might actually end up building eventually. Really though, this is probably the only model that I've ever bought just because I thought the box art looked absolutely incredible. So for those of you who don't know, I generally consider the high-grade Shinmatsunaga Zaku Custom to be one of the coolest looking pieces of box art we have ever gotten from Bandai. I love how much there is going on in this scene. You've got the Zaku looming over the audience, staring you straight in the eye. You've got a Gym Sniper Custom down here with a freaking heat hawk embedded in his head, still sparking as he breathes, as the pilot breathes his last breath, and his mobile suit starts flickering and fading out, and it's just such a intense, life-filled scene that it just sparks the imagination. And then of course you have a Dozo Zabi Zaku back here leading the charge of some currently unseen swarm of Zakus out here in the horizon. It's just such a cool scene. And while the Shinmatsunaga Zaku is a little bit on the plain side, I really wouldn't mind having a high mobility Zaku in my collection. So this next kit is actually one that I started building, and I built about maybe like 15% of it. But the problem is that I bought it for a custom, and then I realized partway through building it that it would not work for that custom. And since this is a kit that I have no interest in building on its own, it's just been sitting here for years now. Out of the various narrative Gundams, I do kind of like the narrative B-Pax, but I would say probably my least favorite is the narrative C-Pax, which ironically is the one that I have in my backlog currently. Now I have played around with various ways that I could maybe customize and paint this to be a little bit more appealing to me, as I just don't like the look of the random chunks of Psycho Frame slapped over the top of the Gundam. But more likely I think I'm just going to end up selling this at some point. It's just not something I'm really that interested in building. So here we have a kit that I grabbed a long time ago that I'm actually still kind of interested in building. It's just in the back corner pile because it is very old. And that's the Zelidia. Yeah, I actually have a high-grade Zelidia. I thought it was a pretty neat model. It's an interesting, unique design. While I'm not exactly chomping at the bit to build this thing, I am probably going to get around to it eventually. One of the things that I found really funny about this model is that I thought there was like a scuff on the side of the box here when I got it, but that's actually printed into the box itself, because I guess whatever scans of the original packaging that Bandai had that they were working off of for the reissue, apparently that had some damage on the box here, and that came through on the new printings of it. Then I've got a frickin' Sergeant Frog thing. I don't care about this franchise. I built a smaller one of these two models that I had. It was fine, I guess. I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing. I'm probably going to sell it. It's just not something that I'm interested in. Then we have a couple other models that I got because they are variants of a high-grade model that I actually really like a lot. I don't know when I'm going to get around to building these, or if I ever will build them completely, or just cannibalize the parts that I want off of them, because, well, I've already built the original, and I do prefer the colors of the original over these two. And the kit I've been referring to this whole time is... I am probably the only reviewer on YouTube that really, really likes the 00 Sky. And you guys probably don't even know because I never got around to reviewing it. But yes, I thought this kit was super cool. So cool, in fact, that I bought the 2 versions they made after it. And even though I already own 3 versions of it, buying the Build Divers Re-Rise version with like the white and the purple is not completely off the table. Alright, so now on the bottom of this pile, we have some 1/100 stuff. We're back into the Mastergrades, and starting off with a kit that I actually got bundled together with my Gundam Stormbringer, and that is the kind of counterpart to the Gundam Stormbringer, his rival, his nemesis, whatever you want to call it. Or actually, I haven't read whatever manga he's from, so this could be like a teammate for all I know. But, you know, you've probably figured it out by now, it's really the only kit that ever gets closely associated with the Stormbringer, the Polypod Ball. It's a funky little model. It's like a ball with spider legs. I'll probably build it eventually, but it's just not something that I'm like super into, so it's probably going to be a while. So the Mastergrade Double X is a kit that's actually so old that this is from back when I used to get my kits from USA Gundam Store. It even has the little Go to Tokyo, Japan promotion from, what, like 3-4 years ago, whenever they did that. This is definitely a kit that's been in my backlog for a while, mostly because it's a design that I kind of like, but I'm not like super into it. So I'll probably get around to it eventually, though. I do like me some Gundam X, and if you like Gundam X, well, you better like the Gundam X and the Double X, because those are the only two that Bandai ever seems to remember to care about. I got a big ol' 1/100 Kairos Gundam that I actually got as a Christmas gift from fellow YouTuber, or I guess former YouTuber at this point, Dan the Plastic Man. If you're an OG viewer of Channel 2S, you'll remember him very well. I still haven't built this yet. I'll probably get to it eventually, though. I do actually kind of like the original Kairos design. And despite them being a staple of basically every American Gunpla collection, funnily enough, there is only one Gundam Wing Endless Waltz kit that I have ever crossed paths with that I currently have in my room, and it's in my backlog, and it's one that I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to building, because it is a design that I'm very mixed about, which is the Mastergrade Epion EW version. So I have some mixed feelings on this kit, because on one hand, I love the Epion design. On the other hand, the version of the Epion that I really like is the TV version. And in all honesty, I would much rather build a high grade or real grade of the TV version, which, with how Bandai's been making a lot of wing kits lately, is a very likely release we're going to see in the next couple of years, than build a master grade of a design that I'm just not really that much of a fan of. So basically the only reason I'm still holding on to this kit is just in case for some weird reason we don't get a TV Epion in the next couple of years, in which case I'll just build this one. And I was ready to end this video here, however I realized there is actually a 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a fifth pile. There's a fifth pile that I've not talked about yet, so we're going to finish up that real quick because I am almost out of battery. Alright, so I have very little battery left and no idea how much space I have left on my SD card, so I'm going to make this last section real quick. So this is the final stack of kits. This is the models that I'm maybe sometime going to paint and customize, but I don't really know for sure. Starting off the stack, we got some 30-minute mission stuff. So the Alto flight type, I picked this up because Crow did a really cool painted custom of it and I wanted to do one of my own. Never got around to it, don't know if I ever will. Airfighter version gray I thought was really cool because it basically turns your 30-minute missions into a transformer. I never really decided on what body specifically I was going to use it for, so it's still in my backlog. The final 30-minute mission kit, though, is the Alto ground type, and this is actually my favorite 30-minute mission kit by a long shot. Of all the 30mm designs, I think this is the one that looks the most like an actual, real, fully realized mecha of its own, and not just a bunch of generic parts. I love the treads, I love the bazooka, I love the whole overall look of it, and I'm definitely looking forward to building this one whenever I get around to it. The only other combination of 30-minute missions parts that comes close to the ground type Alto for me is the one that I recommend personally if you're looking for something to build 30-minute missions wise, and that is the orange Rabiot with the yellow sort of mining / construction equipment. I went ahead and also attached one of the cannons from one of the weapon packs on in such a way that it kind of looks like a mining drill, and the ultimate combined sort of result we get from that is a very cool construction / mining robot that is one of my favorite pieces from 30-minute missions. If I had to go back and rebuy everything I've ever gotten from 30-minute missions, these are probably the only two that I would actually pick up. The next model we're going to look at is officially the oldest model in my backlog. Not by production age, but by how long it's been sitting in my backlog, because this kit, this bad boy right here, this high-grade Universal Century Camphor, has been in my room in this box for a very, very long time. To put it into perspective, those of you who are very long-term watchers of Channel 2S will remember that many years ago I reviewed a high-grade Dynamez kit. This Camphor is from the same order that I bought that Dynamez in. That's how long this thing's been sitting in the box. And I have taken the runners out of the plastic wrap that they come in. So I've sort of half unboxed it, but I've never gotten around to building it, and that mostly just comes down to the fact that I am not sure if I want to build this straight or if I want to paint it. because I don't really mind the colors of the original camphor, but I do think there's a lot of other color schemes that would look really good on it, and I just haven't really decided which one I want to go with. But whenever I have a proper place I can do some real serious airbrushing, this is probably one of the first kits I'm going to build in it. And then the next kit, which is the final Gundam model of my backlog, is one that I have very badly wanted for a long time. This was one of the first kits that I saw that I thought looked super, super cool. Unfortunately, at the time it came out, the Delta Kai was just not a kit that you could easily get a hold of. And I apologize for the glare. Let me just kind of tilt this a little bit so it's maybe not so obvious. There we go. That'll work. So this kit was really hard to find for a while. Eventually I picked one up, but as you probably know, this kit, despite being an awesome design, has some absolutely hideous stickers. So whenever I do plan on building this, if I ever do, my main plan is to just totally paint this thing, give it a new color scheme, make it look awesome, and not use a single sticker, because that is really the only way to make this kit look good. I mean, look at this. Look, hang on. Look at this. Look at how awesome this design is. This thing so clearly deserves better than the stickery mess that it actually ended up getting. And the final model in my backlog is, I believe, the only current kit in my backlog that is not made by Bandai. It's actually a model that I've shown off on this channel before, although the video performed very poorly, so I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't seen it. And that is Aoshima's variable frame fighter Kairos. There are more reviews of this on the internet now than when I bought this, which is funny because I bought this like over a year after it came out, but just I guess no one wanted this kit for some reason. I can't imagine why. It's a freaking anime cat girl that turns into a fighter jet. Literally, I cannot think of anything cooler than this. But apparently people just weren't interested in it. I was actually able to get this really heavily discounted on HLJ, which is the only reason I even considered picking it up. It was like $40 down from like $70 or something. It was like an insane discount. Totally worth it though, because it's a really cool looking kit. I just haven't built it yet because it needs paint. And I don't mean it needs paint in like a Delta Kai kind of way. I mean it needs paint in like a big boy model kit kind of way. Like this is not a Bandai kit. This is not even like a Kotobukiya kit. This is a real big boy paint your own model kit kind of kit. And while I'm 100% okay with putting that kind of work into a kit that looks this cool, I just don't have the space to properly work on something like that because I don't want to be filling up my room with paint fumes. So yeah, whenever I have a proper place to work on some serious painted builds, I am definitely going to be building this kit because I would love to see how this looks in person once it's all together. And there you have it, guys. Now you've seen every single kit that I have in my backlog. And now that I've made this video, I am regretting it a little bit because I realize that now I'm going to be just flooded with comments in all my videos constantly asking me, hey, when are you going to review the Ultron? When are you going to build your Delta Kai? When are you going to build your Camphor? When are you going to build your Stormbringer? What about the Mastergrade Barbatos 2S? What about the Mastergrade Barbatos? Like, that's going to be my entire comment section for a year now. But you know what? That's okay. Because at the end of the day, the reason I have such a massive freaking backlog of kits is because of this channel. And the only way this channel was able to get to the point where I was able to do anything like this was because of you guys. So my camera battery's about to die. I just want to say thank you for watching. I really mean it. You're the people that make this channel go round. No matter how hard YouTube tries to make sure that you don't see my videos, you guys watch them anyways. Thank you so much for that. Also, thank you to New Type. They were also a big part in getting me this many kits. So big thanks to them. Link in the description. You know what to do. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. See you later. Take care, guys. My camera is literally about to die.